Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story. Get ready, something incredible is coming. Man, I've been lugging around this heavy heart ever since I figured out I was the odd man out in my own marriage. I can still picture that day I first walked into Emily's folks' place. It was this big, chilly house where everyone flashed fake smiles that never reached their eyes. It was like tiptoeing across a frozen pond, every move screaming that I didn't fit in. I busted my tail every single day, pouring sweat and grit into my job just so Emily and I could keep a roof overhead and food on the table. But no matter how hard I tried, her family never hid the fact that I wasn't up to their standards. I've lost count of how many times I've wondered if they viewed me as some misfit, my very existence a quiet jab at their fancy lifestyle. Going over to her parents' place felt like walking into a lion's den. I'll never forget those icy stares from her mom, Linda, slicing right through me like a razor. I shrank down, practically disappearing, yet somehow still sticking out like a sore thumb for all the wrong reasons. Those eyes of hers held this unspoken verdict that dragged my spirit even lower. I kept trying to brush it off, telling myself I was just reading too much into it, maybe they just didn't get me. But as time rolled on, it hit me harder each day. No matter how much I gave, I'd never hit the bar they'd set. I can still see myself at one dinner over there, sitting quiet as a mouse while sneaky whispers and sideways glances flew around the table. My body was parked there, but my heart. It was shoved off to the side, stuck listening to this hum of judgment bouncing off every wall. Emily didn't toss me a single kind word or even a quick look to say she had my back, she just sat there, mute. That silence cut deeper than any harsh words ever could. Right then, I felt this crushing loneliness, like I was the only one really in the room while they all acted out some mean-spirited play I wasn't cast in. I've wrestled plenty with what I'm worth after getting hit with that non-stop rejection. Am I not a decent guy? Haven't I poured everything I've got into being the husband she needed? I've laid awake too many nights, running every moment back in my head, hunting for some clue, some reason, or just a tiny spark of hope things might turn around. But day after day, it sank in deeper. I was stuck in this lonely bubble, a stranger in what should have been my own home. Even though I kept pushing to be good and supportive, backing Emily every way I could, her family's disdain chewed at me like a dog on a bone. The way they acted was this slow drip of venom, sneaking into every corner of our life, leaving this sour sting that no amount of care or commitment could rinse out. I started feeling like all my hard work was pointless, like no grind could ever land me a spot at their table, figuratively or otherwise. When I'd steal a quiet second to think, I'd wonder if I was doomed to stay the outcast, locked in a marriage where my flaws got pointed out non-stop. Now, standing here staring down another day, those rough memories come crashing back with brutal sharpness. I'm wrestling with the cold, hard fact that, after all I've put in, I'm still just some trespasser in a family that never took me in. The endless brush-offs and those quiet, mocking looks have ground me down, carving scars way deep in my chest. I'm fighting to match up the guy I think I am with how they see me, the folks who are supposed to be tied to Emily. Every second around them hammers home that I'll never cut it, that family warmth is saved for some other dude who slides right into their world without a ripple. It was just a regular old day when Emily brought up this celebration. Her voice was all calm, like she was mentioning some little thing instead of a family get-together that's always been a kick in the gut for me. You should come, she said, keeping it simple, but it still sent this heavy unease sinking into me. I knew her folks didn't toss invites my way often, and when they did, it was a sure bet for more hurt and gloom. That night, I plopped down in our living room's stillness, my brain spinning with second guesses and stress. I ran through all those times I'd had to drag myself to their shindigs, each one packed with hushed jabs and cutting stares. Just thinking about walking back into that mess made my pulse race with dread. Those nasty grins and sharp whispers. They were old news to me by then. Deep down, I knew this wasn't some shot at being welcomed, it was just another poke to remind me I didn't belong in their circle. But Emily kept nudging me softly, making it feel like I didn't have a say. Her eyes, all gentle and full of hope, dangled this hint of something better. I couldn't shake those nights when her quietness roared louder than anything she could have said, leaving me small and worthless. But right then, her tone was cozy and welcoming, like she honestly thought this time might shake out differently. Even though every gut instinct screamed no, I said I'd go to the celebration, despite this storm of worry brewing inside me. The days after that were a mess of nerves and this faint, stubborn hope. Every solo minute weighed on me, loaded with the dread of coming shame. I tried gearing up for the hurt I knew was waiting, but a little piece of me held tight to the chance that maybe, just this once, I'd find my spot. I thought back to every gathering before, full of snarky comments and frosty looks, wondering if this invite might kick off something fresh and decent. The morning of the big day, I was up early, scrambling to pull my jumbled thoughts together. I caught my reflection, some worn-out guy with stress etched all over his face. I shoved aside memories of past put-downs, getting dressed real careful, hoping a sharp look might guard me from the sting. Every little thing counted, my crisp shirt, my neat hair. Heading out for a day mixing hope with heartbreak, the drive to the place felt like it stretched forever, matching the tangle in my head. The engine's hum mixed with flashes of old times when laughs flipped to sneers and kind words froze into cold glares. Every mile ticked me closer to a harsh nudge that I barely mattered to the people I wanted to click with. I rolled up to the celebration with my heart dragging and this deep vibe of something bad coming. The place was all lit up, buzzing with happy tunes and loud chatter, but I could feel this tension lurking under every grin. I eased in slow, every step heavy with what I knew was ahead. Emily hit me with a quick smile that didn't do much to calm my jittery mind. Right then, I could tell their warm hellos were just covering up the icy judgment from her family, their eyes already pegging me as the guy who didn't belong. All day, I drifted through the crowd, trying to fade in while wrestling this tug-of-war between hope and panic. Every nice face and small talk had this hidden edge of scorn, a constant nudge that I wasn't part of the club. I caught the sound of laughs that just mirrored how alone I felt. The harder I tried to soak in the party, the more that rejection tightened its grip, every second proving I'd always be the odd one out. By the time night rolled in, that shaky hope I'd been nursing slipped into giving up. I saw this celebration wasn't some bridge to fitting in, it was just another setup to rip open the same old cuts. I parked myself in a quiet corner, watching them all mix so easy while I was stuck in this swamp of old hurts and silent ache. That invite, which I'd thought might mean a shift, turned out to be nothing but a heads-up I should have listened to from the jump. That long, dragging night, I just sat there with my head spinning, stuck between wanting to bolt and dreading an even uglier truth if I did. Time crept by, every tick a fight against the ghosts of old embarrassments ringing in my ears. I wanted to shout, to beg for just one nice word or a shred of getting me, but fear locked my mouth shut. In that room's quiet, I'd never felt so alone, a guy dangling between a fading dream and the hard slap of being shut out. Deep down, I knew it was another gut punch reminding me I didn't fit here, and no matter how hard I pushed, I'd always be the outsider in a place I'd hoped to call home. I showed up at the restaurant with my heart weighing me down, all those past kicks still pressing hard. Stepping into that packed dining room, it was alive with talk and chuckles. Every table glowed with this cozy vibe of buddies and kin celebrating together. I'd figured on at least a small nod, maybe a friendly word from folks who ought to care. But as I weaved through the door, the whole place went weirdly still. It hit me like I'd barged into somewhere my showing up wasn't just unwanted, it was a flashing sign of all my screw-ups. All eyes swung my way as I got close to this long table smack in the middle of the room. It was decked out with spotless white cloth, shiny silverware, and flickering candles throwing soft shadows on everyone sitting there. Emily's whole crew was gathered, her folks, brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, even some far-off cousins I'd only caught wind of through hushed chats. Their stares, dark and hard, drilled into me with a chill that froze me up. I felt like some gatecrasher in a world I had no business in. Before I could even get a word out, Linda's sneer sliced through the hush. With a voice dripping in mockery and spite, she piped up, "Oh, look, you actually made it. No seat here for a lowlife like you." Those words stung sharp, hanging there while a wave of mean laughs rolled across the table. I just stood there, locked in place, her jab hitting me harder than any fist ever could. Right then, in that gut-wrenching second, I was aching for Emily to step up, maybe throw me a lifeline with a kind word or just a flicker of understanding. But all I got was her icy, blank stare, her mouth curling into this little taunting grin as she waved lazily toward a lonely chair off to the side. "Go ahead and pick at the scraps," she tossed out, her voice flat, making it crystal clear I had no spot in their circle. Every word she said dragged my heart deeper into the dirt. For years, I'd clung to this hope that my sweat, my grind, and all the love I poured into her would eventually score me a seat at her family's table. Instead, they hit me with the cold, hard truth: I wasn't wanted, didn't measure up, and was never gonna be one of them. I tried to catch my breath, to scrape together something to say, but my voice just stuck in my throat. I shot desperate looks around, praying somebody might back me up, but all I saw were heads turned away or smirks half hidden, like I was the punchline to their private joke. That loneliness hit me like a tidal wave, like I was shut out of some club everybody else had the password to but me. I could feel it in my bones, they all agreed I didn't belong. Sitting there at that table was like being on trial forever, every grin and chit-chat between her kin laced with this jab at how I didn't stack up. I slid into a chair on the outskirts, there in body but a ghost in spirit, while the meal went on with forks clinking and quiet wisecracks I wasn't in on. I stared at the plate in front of me, hoping it'd pull me away from the growing hurt, but it just tasted sour, soaked in my own tears and shame. My head kept spinning back to those other get-togethers where I'd eaten the same crap in silence. Every mean dig, every snide look, it piled up into this load I was hauling all by myself. Perched there, feeling more like a clown than a husband, my mind was a mess of whys. Why was I always stuck peering in from the outside? Why did all my trying, my endless push to be decent, just paint me as the weirdo? Those questions crushed me heavier every minute. And Emily's cold shoulder in the middle of it all. That stung worse than anything. I scanned her face for even a hint of sorry or a sign she was in my corner, but she just sat there, cool as ice, like my misery was a tiny hiccup in her flawless world. It hit me like a betrayal, not just from her folks, but from the woman I'd promised my life to. My chest ached, waking up to how tiny and pointless they'd made me feel in the one place I'd hunted for love and a real home. Finally, I couldn't take those frosty glares and the poison dripping from every hushed jab anymore. I got up from the table. I didn't say a word. What was the point when the shame was that thick? I turned slow, each step a quiet middle finger to the unfairness I'd taken. Walking out that restaurant, the door shutting soft behind me, rejection burned through me like wildfire, a sharp wake-up call that no matter how much you bust your ass, sometimes that outsider weight never lifts. Back in my little apartment that night, the quiet crashed in like some rude squatter. I kept waiting for a text or a call from Emily after that brutal dinner, but nada, just dead air. Every second stretched out, endless, while I ran the night back in my head, those chilly stares, the muttered slams, her stone-cold vibe bouncing around my empty room. My heartbeat thumped loud in my ears, each beat a kick in the gut reminding me how solo I was. I could still see her eyes locking mine for a split second, zero pity, zero backup, leaving me high and dry in a silence that screamed louder than any cuss-out. In that thick stillness, I started second-guessing every move I'd made up to then. I'd busted my hump for years, always thinking someday her family, hell, even just Emily, might give me a nod for it. But all I got was this big, empty nothing, a gap that ate up every shot I took at belonging. That quiet wasn't hollow, it was packed with all the unsaid knocks and this total lack of warmth. Did Emily ever feel bad about it, I wondered, or had she just settled into this silent shove-off ages ago? Every time my phone didn't buzz, every gap in the hush, it fueled this fire of mad and hurt blazing inside. I could still hear that restaurant door click shut behind me, sealing off another lousy run-in with her crew. It was clear as day, those cold eyes tracking me out, that low grumble of shade chasing me like a dark cloud. Alone in my place now, that silence cut even deeper, 'cause it was all mine to deal with. It was like proof of everything, that I was never in the cards, never really part of a family that should have been my refuge. No comfort, no kind words, just this raw, open feeling, almost like I could touch it. As night got darker, that quiet turned into its own beast, wrapping me up tight, forcing me to face the reality I'd dodged forever. I was on my own in my own damn life. Every shadow in the room seemed to whisper how I didn't cut it, every groan of the floorboards a nudge about all the times I'd been ignored. Thinking of Emily, her silence wasn't some shield, it was a blade making me vanish. Did she even know how bad it sliced me, or had she just gotten cozy with the hurt like her folks? That silence roared in my ears, slamming home that I was just some tag-along in a life I'd fought to build. In that long, dragging night watch, I let my mind run loose. I drifted back to when we started out, when love felt like it had never run dry and every chat sparkled with possibility. Those days seemed miles off now, washed out by time and a pile-up of being overlooked. The stillness around me laughed at those old times, showing how far I'd slipped from the guy I'd wanted to be. I could practically feel the difference between those warm early vibes and the freeze of where I was now, a world where quiet ruled and squashed any shot at fixing things or hoping. As the hours ticked on, that heavy silence started molding something in me. I figured out I couldn't keep choking on this suffocating hush forever. It was a neon sign screaming that shit had to shift, that no backup was my wake-up call to move. Sure, the quiet had been my shadow, but it also lit this tiny rebel spark in me. I swore I wouldn't let it call the shots on my value or steer my story anymore. That silence had its last say in my chest. Now it was my turn to speak up and grab my pride back, even if it meant smashing the quiet that had owned my life too long. I woke up to a morning all bleak and gray, matching the funk I was in. Last night's stifling silence still hung over me like a storm cloud. I sat on my bed's edge, sunk in this muted gloom of a guy so used to getting shut out that even the soft hum of daylight felt like a load. Then, bam, a knock at my door broke the hush, jolting me and twisting my nerves. My pulse kicked up as I got up slow, every step to the door dragging with dread of what was next. Opening it, my gut flipped. There was Emily with her folks, their faces all stiff with weird vibes and fake normal. Linda, always the queen of icy control, wouldn't even look at me, just stared past like I was some ghost she could skip. Emily's hands shook a little as she twisted them, that usual smug grin gone for once. The air in that doorway was thick as hell, like it was in on reminding me I'd never be one of them. "We gotta talk," Emily said low, no snark this time, just this heavy tone you couldn't misread. I crossed my arms, leaning easy on the frame, trying to steel myself for the showdown I knew was coming. "About what?" I shot back, keeping my voice level even though each word felt like a dare aimed at all the crap I'd been through. Her dad, Tom, all worn out looking and carrying this tired letdown vibe, let out a big sigh and rubbed his head like this chat had been weighing on him forever. "Listen, we need a favor," he said straight, his voice flat, like a guy stuck with a chore he hated. That word, favor, slammed me like a brick, a nasty slap that after all they'd dished out, they still thought I owed them something. For a split second, I just stood there, locked in place, tangled up in a mess of feelings pulling me every which way. Last night's embarrassment was still raw, buzzing in my head, and now here they were, acting like my scars were just little bumps they could smooth over with a quick favor. I sucked in a big breath, this slow burn of mad bubbling up in my chest while I tried to wrap my brain around how they could flip the switch, taking the guy they'd always mocked and sneered at, and suddenly turning me into their cash lifeline. It felt like every lousy moment, the snarky comments, the frosty glares, the way they'd boxed me out, was building to this, where my worth got boiled down to bucks and bills. I took a step back, letting this thick quiet stretch out between us, heavy enough to carry all the unsaid gripes and every quiet dig from way back. Emily's eyes darted over mine, shaky, like she was fishing for some guilt or maybe a nod that I got how much they'd hurt me over the years. But all she got back was the hard look of a guy who'd taken too much crap and was finally ready to push back. "A favor," I said slow, my voice just above a hush, but every bit of it loaded with the weight of all the times they'd chipped away at me. Tom's eyes flickered for a second, and I caught this quick flash of something, maybe regret, but it got buried fast under all that family baggage. Yeah, he replied, his voice softening a touch, letting a little weak spot peek through. We need you to pitch in on something nobody else can handle. That fuzzy talk lit a suspicious spark in me. Was this just another trick to shove me into a corner where they'd judge me by my wallet instead of the heart I'd put in or the stuff I'd given up? My head was spinning, flipping through a reel of moments. The dinner where they'd torn into me, all those get-togethers where just showing up felt like a kick in the teeth, and now this random drop-in stinking of a setup. Right then, I was caught between pissed off and feeling sorry for them, mad as hell at their nerve, but kinda sad for a crew so wrapped up in their high-and-mighty act they couldn't see the wreckage they'd left. I glanced at Emily, and her face had this hint of sorry, maybe a tiny spark of something, regret, or the first clue that our whole deal was busted beyond fixing. What do you want me to do? I snapped, my tone sharp enough to cut, the words dangling there, loaded with the threat of more hurt if they dared to come clean. It felt like forever with nobody saying a damn thing. That silence stung almost as bad as the old insults, shoving me face first into the ugly fact that I was still their punching bag in this twisted family game. Then Linda cleared her throat, all stiff like she was gearing up for a fight she couldn't dodge. We need you to pick up a bill, she said, her voice brittle, cold as her stare. My gut dropped when it hit me, not just any tab, but the fat bill from that dinner, the one that stood for every slam, every brush off, every time they'd made me feel like less than nothing. The air in that doorway got so thick it was choking, the pressure damn near crushing as I stood there, wrestling with how huge this ask was. My brain was a whirlwind of questions and this deep, gnawing betrayal ready to swallow me whole. In that tense beat, it clicked, this wasn't some peace offering or a step to patch things up, it was just another grab from a family that had never let me in. My voice snagged in my throat as I weighed what my pride was worth, knowing whatever I chose here was gonna flip my life upside down. I can still pinpoint when it sank in that this visit wasn't wrapping up, and the insults were about to hit a whole new low. I'd let them in, thinking maybe we could finally hash it out straight. But the second they plopped down in my living room, it was obvious this wasn't about fixing old hurts. They sprawled out like they owned the place, like I was just a prop in their scheme. Linda locked those icy, scheming eyes on me and started talking, like she was reading off a script with zero shame. About last night, she kicked off, her voice slick with fake sugar, we need to square things up. I stood there, floored, her words seeping in slow like some nasty poison. For a heartbeat, I thought she might toss out a sorry, ease up a bit, but nope, she kept going. We need you to cover the bill. Those words bounced around the quiet room, and this mix of rage and disbelief slammed into me. I'd taken so much crap already, and now they wanted me to foot the bill for that dinner, a night rigged to flaunt their upper hand and shove me back in my place. Emily, who'd been quiet forever, just shrugged like it was no big deal. You've got the cash, she said, her tone shutting down any argument, and you can swing it. That offhand shrug-off hurt worse than any slam before. It was like all my years of busting my ass got sized up by my paycheck, not the love I'd poured out or the grind I'd put in daily. My face got hot, my chest tightening as I tried to stomach how cruel this was. Here I was, a guy who'd always tried to hold her up, given everything I had, and now they were sticking me with the tab for something I never signed up for. The room closed in, their smug grins and practiced looks boxing me in. Every bit of that moment looped in my head, the scorn in their stares, the murmur of their silent judging, how Emily's eyes dodged mine whenever I looked for even a scrap of warmth or getting it. I hauled in a breath, fighting to calm the chaos raging inside. Cover the bill. I echoed, my voice tight and low, like saying it out loud might soften the blow of what was happening. Tom squirmed in his seat, looking uneasy, but he didn't explain more. It was a hefty hit, he muttered, dodging, and since you weren't pulling your weight otherwise, we figured it's only right you chip in. That just twisted the knife deeper. Fair. Nothing about paying for a night built to spotlight my flaws and knock me down was fair. I scanned the room, every eye on me dripping with pity and that high horse vibe, like I was some pity project they had to prop up. The soft rustle of clothes and the half-hidden smirks in their eyes just fed my anger with every tick. I'd lost track of how many times I'd bitten my tongue, swallowed my pride, and taken their hits like it was normal. But standing there in my own damn living room, facing them down, I knew I couldn't let this slide anymore. Every word they'd thrown, every sneer, it all piled up to right now. That dinner invite, the way they'd clowned me at the restaurant, and now this cash grab, it was the last straw in a string of non-stop slams. I felt like I was sinking in shame, stuck paying a debt that wasn't about dollars but my whole damn dignity. My fists balled up, and I fought to keep my voice from shaking, knowing this was it, keep playing the quiet doormat or finally call out the bullshit that had taken over my life. Slow and steady, I stepped closer, cutting the gap between me and Linda, staring her dead in the eye. The room went pin-drop quiet, like even the air was holding its breath for what I'd say. My heart was hammering, a mix of nerves and grit, every bit of pent-up frustration rushing up. "I've done way more than enough for this family," I said, my voice quaking with real feeling, "and I'm not gonna be your ATM for your dumb screw-ups." Those words hung there, a big, bold no that smashed their fake family front to bits. Nobody said a thing for what felt like ages. The silence was loaded, packed with my fury and the plain truth finally breaking free. In that still moment, I knew I wasn't gonna trade my self-worth to patch up their busted lie anymore. I stood there, a guy who'd found his guts at last, ready to take whatever came from spilling the real deal, even if it meant busting every silent rule that had tied me down all this time. I'd been putting up with years of quiet hurt, swallowing all that pain without a peep, but that day, standing there under the smug glow of Emily's stuck-up family, every slam and nasty word they'd ever thrown at me came crashing down like a ton of bricks. I'd always held out this little hope that my behind-the-scenes grind and non-stop hustle would someday get me a nod of respect. Instead, they hit me with this last gut-punch demand, like it was cooked up just to snap what scraps of pride I had left. Sitting at that long table in that stark, freezing room, my heart was slamming against my ribs, like it wanted to bust out and dodge the shame. Every pair of eyes was glued on me, watching in silence, like they were all in on the daily dose of crap that was my life. This wasn't just about cash, it was a cold-blooded move to shrink me down to a walking wallet, a pawn they could use whenever it suited folks who never gave a damn about me. I kept flashing back to all those times I'd choked down my ego, taking their poisoned stares and sharp, hushed digs that cut way deeper than anything they'd say out loud. That dinner where they told me to scrape up the leftovers, with Emily's little smirk ringing in my head, burned like a fire that wouldn't quit. Now, with her family sitting there all high and mighty, it hit me, they didn't just expect me to eat their garbage, they wanted me to bankroll it too. My fist balled up so tight I could feel the shake of this rage I'd kept locked down for years behind all my yes sirs and quiet nods. I dragged in a shaky breath and let it rip, my voice wobbling but dead set. "How the hell can you even ask me this after all I've done to fit in with you people, after every damn thing I've given up? You've got the nerve to turn me into some cash machine." My words weren't fancy, but they hauled the weight of every bruise they'd left on me. Linda's eyes sparked with this mix of scorn and shock, like me pushing back was some wild twist in a game where I'd always played mute. Emily just turned her head, her face all mixed up with feelings that didn't help or blame, just this empty void that twisted my gut even more. In that drawn-out second, I felt my choice lock into place, hard and clear. I'd hit the wall, keeping quiet wasn't gonna fly anymore, taking their crap meant tossing out the last bits of my self-worth. I thought about those endless nights doubting myself, all those lonely hours wondering if love could patch up the raw marks rejection had carved into me. Now, staring down this final slap, paying for a dinner that didn't just cost bucks but my whole damn dignity, I knew I wasn't playing along anymore. I found my footing, my voice picking up steam. "I've poured every ounce of me into this marriage, and you act like I'm just some handy gadget for you to use. I'm not shelling out for your little superiority party, and I'm done letting you whittle me down with your demands." Every word was me kicking back, staking my claim as the guy still standing under all the hurt they'd piled on. I felt something shift inside, a tiny, stubborn flame flickering to life in all that gloom. The room sat still for a long, heavy beat, the air thick with the heft of what I'd said. I scanned each face, hunting for a shred of guilt or a sign they got it, but all I saw was their dug-in determination to keep up the nasty act. Emily's stare drifted off, her silence slamming the door shut on any chance we'd patch things up. In that quiet, make-or-break moment, I knew I'd hit my limit. I'd made up my mind, my value wasn't tied to my checkbook or the fake moves of a family that never really saw me. I stood there, pulse racing, my whole being lit up with this bold, no way, ready to ditch a life of silent beatdowns. That moment rolled over me like a fresh wave, swearing I wouldn't be chained by their non-stop disdain anymore. I was through, done being a sidekick in a crew that got off on cutting me down. When I turned and walked off from that table, every step screamed I was taking back my life, my pride, my worth. The road ahead was blurry and tough, sure, but for the first time in forever, I felt light, free from their heavy expectations and the bite of their constant jabs. With one last, solid breath, I ditched the wreckage of a past that had drained me dry, ready to step into a future where I'd finally get noticed, really noticed, for the guy I was and the life I'd earned. I'd spent years biting my lip and choking down the hurt, figuring if I kept my head low long enough, things might turn around someday. But that big day, when their demand landed, not just in words but with the full force of a lifetime of disrespect, I knew I'd hit the end of the rope. I took in the faces sprawled around my living room, those masks that had smirked and nodded all polite-like while secretly tearing apart everything I did, and this icy clarity settled over me. I couldn't keep kidding myself that their endless pushaways, sneaky sneers, and quiet hate were just part of the deal. It was time to snip the ties and grab my life back. I ran through all those times I tried, usually for nothing, to show I was worth something. Every nice thing I did, every piece I gave up hoping they'd let me in, just dug the gap between us wider. Emily, who I'd once thought would have my back no matter what, had turned into this silent teammate in a years-long game of neglect and meanness. Right then, facing her and her crew, it sank in, I'd been chasing a fantasy that was never mine, a shot at fitting in where I was never supposed to belong. With my heart dragging and my head finally clear of dumb hope, I spoke up, this steady grit in my voice catching even me off guard. I've thrown everything I've got into holding this family together, I said slow, each word feeling like a step out of the mess that had torn me up so bad, but I can't keep faking it, acting like it's fine to be treated like less than I'm worth. My voice stayed soft, but it packed the punch of every wound still raw, every tear I'd let slip in the dark. For the first time in ages, I locked eyes with her and didn't see that cold, blank wall of a wife, just a quick flash of regret, a sharp little echo of the woman I'd loved, lost now in her family's harshness. I caught the tug-of-war in her look, stuck between the world she'd made with them and the truth staring her down. That glimpse gave me the last shove I needed to break loose. The path ahead was gonna be lonely and shaky, I knew that, but it was a gamble I was ready to take to get my dignity back. The room's silence got heavier as my choice sank in deep. I didn't feel that crushing load of what they wanted me to be anymore, just this surprising lift, a breath of relief knowing I was picking me over a lifetime of quiet hell for once. I scraped up the guts to keep going, my words a gentle but solid goodbye to the shackles I'd worn too long. I can't play this game anymore, I went on. I've gotta find a way to live without always being told I don't belong. I'm worth more than being a footnote, more than just a guy you hit up for cash and sacrifices. When I wrapped up talking, the room didn't budge an inch, the thick vibe broken only by my own calm breaths. It was like a gate slammed shut behind me, closing off a part of my life that had stopped making sense ages ago. I spun around, ditching the murmurs, the icy looks, and the empty talk of family. That quiet walkout was my first solid move toward a life I could piece back together, away from the non-stop gloom of rejection and shame. Stepping out that door, the weight of all that old junk started peeling off, swapped out for this careful flicker of what could be coming. I'd finally snipped the strings tying me to a world of silent misery. I had no clue what was waiting out there, just that I had the guts to tackle it. With every stride away from that familiar ache, I jumped into a fresh start, rooted in the plain fact that I deserved love, respect, and a life that was all mine. I woke up to a world that felt frostier than ever. The morning sun didn't bring any heat as I grabbed my phone, seeing it light up with a flood of texts. While I'd been wrestling with my own wake-up call, the folks I used to trust had kicked off a new attack. Emily's family had taken their meanness public, swinging social media like a club to trash my name. I gawked at the screen, stunned, scrolling through posts stuffed with lies and twisted stories. Betrayal hit me like a bitter punch, and it felt like my whole life was caving in. Every text, every comment, rubbed it in. I was tossed out, turned into the fall guy for all their gripes. Looking back over the last few weeks, I could still see those chilly glares, hear the hushed slams, and feel the demands that had ripped my pride to shreds. Now they were spinning those bits to make me the bad guy in a tale I didn't write. Linda had slapped up this over-the-top post, all polished to pull at heartstrings and spark rage, saying I'd ditched my family when they needed me, twisting every memory into some cold, selfish saga. Emily's quick little note under it, "He's always been this way," dug the knife in deeper. Every fake story and half-lie splattered online stung like a slap across the face. Comments rolled in from strangers who barely knew me and folks who'd only heard their cooked-up version, each one hammering another spike into the shaky shell of who I was. I tried digging up a time when I bought into people being good, when I figured love and hard work could bulldoze any roadblock. Now I was staring down the ugly truth. Those dreams got smashed flat under piles of fake blame. Sitting at my kitchen table, I felt cut off and laid bare, my heart thumping with mad and this heavy sadness. How could people who were supposed to be my crew team up to spew this kind of poison? It was like every slip-up I'd made got blown up and blasted out, locking my name to shame forever. I scrambled for some way to fight back, to tell my piece, but the hate storm was too fierce. The more I thought about swinging, the clearer it got. The real fight wasn't against screen words, but the deep hurt they'd carved into me. Right then, something clicked, a stubborn itch to take back my story, no matter how rough it'd be. I started typing out my side, picking each word careful to lay out what I'd been through. Every letter was a middle finger to the unfairness I'd eaten, a shot at setting things right. I wrote about the dinner table humiliation, the mean quiet that came after, and the money load they'd dumped on me. I made it clear this wasn't just about cash, it was years of feeling like a nobody, unseen and worthless. I paused for just a second before hitting post, knowing once it was out there, no going back. When I tapped that button, a wave of feelings crashed over, relief, nerves, and this fresh jolt of self-respect. I knew plenty wouldn't buy it, that their slick lie web was thick, but I also knew truth had some muscle, even if it took its sweet time to win out. Hours ticked by, and I watched the crowds start to tilt. Some who'd swallowed their story blind began poking holes in it. Messages from strangers and old buddies trickled in, little beams cutting through the smear campaign's dark. That's when it hit me, my tale wasn't done, my voice, shut down by cruelty and fear before, had finally busted out. The online war was brutal and didn't let up, but every comment I skimmed and every "I've got you" note patched me up a bit more. I got it, can't rewrite what's gone, but I could steer what's next by standing tall. Their mudslinging, meant to break me, had lit a spark instead, a hunger to live my way, free from their toxic lies and backstabbing. I wasn't letting gloom take the wheel. I told myself even in the blackest spots, there's a speck of hope hiding out. I swore I'd figure out how to lean on my own strength and carve a road to getting whole. Every "hang in there" text, every bit of cheer, reminded me I wasn't shaped by their nastiness, but by my own grit to climb over it. Each heartbeat woke me up more, tuning me into this power I'd let sleep too long. The path ahead was fuzzy, but I was set to walk it proud. I started sketching out a life I'd rebuild, piece by piece, right out of the mess they'd left. That pain was a tough coach, brutal but real, muttering lessons about bouncing back, letting go, and finding myself. I started spotting the good in little wins, a pal's kind word, the glow of a real smile, the low-key buzz of sticking up for what's right. I held those tight, 'cause they were the stepping stones back to the life I used to know. Every sunrise handed me a shot to rewrite a story that had been all mucked up with deceit and garbage. I jumped into that fight full on, knowing truth would eventually burn through, no matter how buried it got in the dark. With this new fire in me, I marched into a future I could mold, hell-bent on never letting them hush me again. I clung to this faith that even after their non-stop lie fest, honesty and guts would light the way, hauling me back to some peace and real joy. I plunked down at my beat-up wooden desk, the stillness of the night hugging me like an old, frayed quilt, staring at the empty screen glowing back at me. The last few days had scraped me raw, but they'd also lit this fire to take back the story those jerks had hijacked. I'd been hushed up way too long, watching my real deal get twisted by folks who couldn't give a rip about the hurt I was hiding. Tonight, I said enough's enough, time to let my voice punch through the shadows. I sucked in a big breath and started hammering the keys, every tap a little, screw you, to the bull they'd been slinging. I spilled out the guts of that dinner where they made me feel like dirt, all those times I sat there mute while they lobbed insults my way, and the sour bite of being sold out when Emily and her crew spun my mess into some circus for everyone to gawk at. I could still see those blank, icy stares, the brush-offs, and the mean-ass words that sliced me up worse than any knife. My hands shook as I laid it all out, not to stick it to them, but to get the facts straight and keep a grip on the guy I still wanted to be. I typed up how I'd busted my hump every day, clocking long shifts and lying awake patching up my busted heart, all chasing a love and a "you're okay" that never showed up. I put down how I'd felt like a ghost right next to her, turned into some useless add-on in a life that was supposed to run on trust and real teamwork. Every word I punched and peeled off a chunk of the years I'd kept it all bottled up. It started slow, then picked up speed, like the keyboard was egging me on to dump everything I'd stashed away. I wrote about that second I finally told them, no way, to a demand that used to feel like a brick wall, and how that one ballsy move cracked open a shot at a life where I could breathe free. As I kept going, I started poking at what love even means and what self-respect costs. I drifted back to the early days with Emily, when every chat was full of big dreams and promises, when I was dead sure our spark could plow through anything. Now those memories hit bittersweet, like some sweet tune coming out of a busted guitar. I laid out how the laughs and grins from back then had faded into this heavy quiet, loaded with grudges they wouldn't say out loud and a low-key hopelessness. I owned up to the pain, how I'd bawled alone in the dark, every tear proof of the non-stop fight to not feel like trash. In what I wrote, I wasn't after payback, I wanted folks to get it, to let the truth outshine their slick lies. I pointed out that love ain't counted in cash and you can't buy respect with a paycheck. I made it clear the shame they piled on me wasn't some one-off, it came from years of being ignored and the frostbite of a family I was never gonna fit into. I told them I'd hit my limit, that I wasn't letting my pride get stomped anymore by people who acted like they were tight with me. Every line was me begging for what's fair, every chunk of text a loud claim to be heard, seen, and worth something. When I was done, I stopped and scanned every bit, my heart thumping with nerves and a rush of ease. The screen flickered soft in the dim room as I held off for one last second before hitting send. Right then, I knew shit was about to flip for good. My words were gonna fly past my little screen, hitting up strangers, buddies, maybe even the ones who'd looked the other way before. I shut my eyes, and a tear rolled down, part sad for what was, part pumped for what's next. With shaky fingers and a heart set firm, I smacked send, letting my truth loose out there. That move was me snagging my story back. I wasn't gonna be the quiet punching bag for their crap anymore. I'd spoken up, rough and real, and that was the first leg toward a life without their lies, their heavy expectations, and finally being the guy I was meant to be all along. Another story wraps up on Top Stories Hub. Make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and drop your reactions in the comments.